Hey guys, welcome back to my next art book preview video. This week we have a Morpho Anatomy for Artists, Face, Head and Neck by Michel Lauricella. Apologies to the artist, I will definitely be pronouncing the name wrong. I should have looked that up before I started recording this. But there is a quick look at the front and back. You can see the size of this compared to my hand. Small hairy hands, according to one of the commenters in my last video. So let's get straight into this. There's a quick look at the contents, what's going to be included in this. Feel free to pause the video and take a proper look through at that. So once we get past the introduction, we do start with the foundations, the basics, the proportions and the structure I think it goes into. And if you've watched any of my videos before, you know that I always recommend these types of things if you're learning to draw something, no matter what the subject is. Now, judging from these, I think that he uses the Loomis proportions, or at least for the most part. He may have changed things a little bit himself. So you might be familiar with these already, especially if you've read any Andrew Loomis books. But I always think it's quite good to get a second opinion, or more than a second opinion, to get other artists' takes, even if they're using the same foundations, the same information, because sometimes for me, I can learn from one teacher, but there can be holes in my knowledge, and it's not necessarily that the person that has taught it has done anything wrong, it's just sometimes maybe the way they've written it doesn't read easily to me. But my point by that is that if I've seen a few different artists sort of give you the fundamentals, it really fills in the gaps. Sorry, that was a really long way around of saying that, wasn't it? But yes, so one of the benefits of these Morpho books, as well as them being really affordable, is they're very easy to travel around with you because they are very small books in terms of size. That being said, I don't have an issue with the text, like the size of the text, but I guess it's one thing to consider if your eyes are not very good. They are very highly rated books, these, by the way, and this is actually book 10 in the Morpho Anatomy for Artists series. And one of my favourite things about these books is how they break things down like this into basic shapes. As mentioned at the beginning, I always think that's probably the most important thing to learn with anything, as well as like the skeleton and, bony landmarks, which we're onto here. And another thing that we are going to see, according to the blurb on this one, is a lot of things that aren't actually covered in portrait books. Not that this is a portrait book, it's head and neck, but it talks a little bit about fat and, skin folds and things. So those of you that are familiar with the Morpho books will know that there actually is a book specifically on fat and wrinkles, or something along those lines anyway, which I think is pretty cool because you don't see that many art books teaching that kind of thing. So quite unique, really. So you might already own some of the other structure or anatomy books, but this one definitely goes the most in-depth to the head and neck and face and the surrounding musculature, as you can see here. If you've ever drawn a portrait or, an illustration of a face, you will know it really needs a neck or a bust, shoulders, things like that to complete the piece. Otherwise, it's really weird. You're drawing like a floating face. So he's touched on planes as well, and also different age groups. He's talked about things like, when babies haven't developed the teeth, how it affects the skull underneath, or when people have lost their teeth when they get older, how that affects the skull and changes the whole shape. So it is actually really interesting stuff, this. I do actually have another book that focuses specifically on the head and neck, and it's the Anatomy for Sculptors one. It's a really good book, but that's a bit more analytical than this one, a little bit like heavier on photo examples. Sometimes I prefer that, whereas sometimes I actually prefer the artist take on it. Because when an artist is drawing it specifically to learn, they've sort of, emphasized what you need to learn. They've made a point of drawing it. It's a lot clearer in some respects. But everyone has their own personal preference, I guess. So I'm skipping a couple of pages at a time, but we're pretty much through it. They're not huge books. They're around about 100 pages, maybe a little bit more. But I hope you found this video useful if you were looking at buying this book. I will put links to where I got it in the description box below. Aside from that, though, make sure you subscribe to the channel so I can keep making content like this. Thank you for watching.